The gates are closed at Ford Motor Company's factory in Geelong. It is one of dozens of manufacturers that have implemented temporary shutdowns to cope with slack demand and a crisis in Australia's manufacturing industry. By 2016, Ford will close its assembly plant for good, making more than 500 people redundant.
Ford's decided to pull out. One would say that, the ability to actually be able to compete with so much of an open market within this country. It's the only country that has such an open market compared to anywhere else in the world, and they're going to struggle. And so that's why they've pulled out.
Competition from Asian producers, a strong Aussie dollar and a decision by the government to limit subsidies to the car sector have hit manufacturers hard. Ford, Holden and Toyota are all closing their factories, putting 40,000 jobs in the sector at risk. In Geelong, many question whether there is a viable future for manufacturing in Australia.
I think the situation for manufacturing in Geelong is very serious. I think it's in, dire situations. There ain't going to be a lot of manufacturing, there ain't going to be a lot of jobs, and I think it's going to be very destructive for the Geelong community.
On top of the losses at Ford, aluminium giant Alcoa is shutting with the loss of 800 jobs, and Qantas is closing an aircraft maintenance facility with the loss of 300 jobs. The crisis is forcing manufacturers to restructure, rethink how they operate, and seek out new strategies to survive.
Some of these changes are global changes which we cannot have an impact on, but having said that, what we're trying to do is work on programs in sustainability, in innovation, in best practice, in leadership, which equip these companies to be able to deal with some of these changes and take advantage of some of these changes by using some tools and techniques and experts from around the world. The future for manufacturing in Geelong is definitely it is competing on value and not cost.
At one of Geelong's oldest manufacturers, Backwell IXL, preparations for the end of car making in Australia have been in train for several years. The company has diversified its product line, which means more than half its factory can remain open when a big customer like Ford is on a temporary shutdown.
We have solar applications that we're looking at. We have improved the capabilities of our foundry, so we can do different types of metal castings. We can do high chrome castings. We've got a new heat treatment facility that allows us to temper and normalize high resistant metals.
The newly elected government under Prime Minister Tony Abbott has ruled out giving large-scale subsidies to failing businesses. But industry is seeking more subtle forms of support to compensate for what it says are the high costs of doing business in Australia.
But I think it's really about setting up a framework that creates a differential advantage for Australian industry. And areas that they could focus on immediately would be energy costs. So the regulated energy environment at this stage has continued to see energy prices spiral upwards. And I think from that point of view, Australia has access to cost-effective energy sources, and that should be one of the areas that they look at.
Persuading the government to loosen the purse strings at a time when the federal budget is under pressure from the end of the mining investment boom will be difficult. For manufacturers, the message is clear. They must adapt, drive efficiencies, seek out new markets and make higher value products. The days of relying on taxpayer subsidies are over. Jamie Smyth, Financial Times, Geelong.